Thank you for coming to our luncheon today for veterans, sponsored by the Senior Center, and then this Office of Social Service will be presenting speakers today. I want to start off by saying thank you for your service, most important, and we're going to have Bill Savastano lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I do have some literature out there, you'll see the order, and I'll introduce each person as we go. Bill, do you want to, I don't want to be too close to the speaker.
Oh, use the mic?
Yeah. If you get too close to that speaker, you'll, okay.
Just briefly, before we do the pledge, a couple of reminders, especially about lots that goes on around Veterans Day over the weekend. Branford parade at 1 o'clock on Sunday. It's a nice day, just come out, be part of the parade. You can walk in it, or you can just sit and watch. Monday, of course, in town, all 4 schools in town do something, and if you haven't been invited to one of those school events on Monday, you can go right across the hall and invite yourself. That's what I did a couple of years ago. And last but not least, as far as looking ahead, Memorial Day, each year I try to make a little speech here. We need more. There's a good turnout today. There'll be a good turnout on Monday. But we need you guys to come to the parade on Memorial Day. There's only half a dozen of us there, and we need more representation. So remember that down the road. And please, let's thank Louisa for putting this whole program together.
Thank you.
Along with Ann James and our tax assessor, Mr. Ambrose.
That would be me today.
Oh, okay. Okay, if you got any hats, take them off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So for our first speakers today, they did bring a PowerPoint. I hope you enjoy it. It is Gina Ribesi, RN, town resident for many years, and Bonnie Malaysian with Equine Expressions, working with horses. And we're going to be bringing that you guys are bringing the program into town. Horses working with veterans and individuals with PTSD. And I'm going to turn the mic over to them, and they're going to present their program to you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, again, I want to thank you for your service. I appreciate you having us. We appreciate being here, and we appreciate you. I want to tell you a little bit about our program. It's called Equine Expressions. And this year, what's really great is we have an equine-assisted therapy grant that is funded by the VA Adaptive Sports Grant. And we will be able to provide 8 veterans or a group of 8 veterans free services. Let's see, so there's no cost to participate. Equine Expressions is one of 22 military certified by EGALA, the Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association, to provide services to veterans. I'm Gina Ribesi. I'm an RN. I'm also military certified, as well as an equine specialist. This is Bonnie Malaysian.
So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and our model, which is called EGALA, through the Equine Assisted Growth and Learning, they're the only organization in the country that certifies workers to do this military work. And actually, there's only about 22 programs in the whole country that are designated to do this. And in every program, we have an equine specialist and a mental health specialist that work with the veterans. And under this grant, it's free to all veterans. We can do 8 individual sessions or 8 group sessions. And what we do know in our country that 1 in every 5 veterans struggles with PTSD. In no way does every veteran have it. And I know there's a range of people that have it. There's people that have it severely, and there's people that might have it mildly. But what we do know that it creates a lot of challenges for people in their relationships, in their ability to cope with certain emotions. They have a lot of difficulty reintegrating. I see that there's a lot of people in the audience today that came from earlier battles and earlier wars. And we are sorry that a lot of the services that are available now to help people with these struggles were not available to you. But I'm hoping that the government learned something along the way, and now they try to reach out to the veterans that are coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan. So some of the common symptoms that we see with people with PTSD is that hypervigilance. That's something that really kept them very safe in military life, but it doesn't transfer as well when they come home. They sometimes have increased depression and anxiety, negative thoughts, and the fight, flight, or freeze. And that's where we start to get into the horses, because that's something that's very similar to what horses do. They are prey animals, and they have a fight, flight, and freeze method about them. In our equine-assisted program, there's always horses. We do not do any riding on the horses. There's a licensed mental health person and an equine specialist. All our sessions are on the ground. We don't do any riding. The reason is we want horses to have free will to interact with you, and we want the people to have free will. It's all safe in a very supportive environment. And the therapeutic metaphors that come out of it, what we say is what happens between you guys and the horses in the arena are the same thing that happens in life. Let's see. So we always start our sessions with something called observation. And I don't know if the people in the back can see these horses, but we have 3 horses standing and 3 horses lying on the ground. And the first thing we might ask someone is, what do you see? And I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts about this picture or what they see in it. Any thoughts at all?
I only see 2 horses in there, I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
Okay, no, I just wanted to be sure it wasn't me.
Okay, well,
Stand corrected.
I stand corrected.
I'm not trying to correct you, I just want to be sure.
But that's fine, because it's whatever stands out for you. So the 2 that you see lying on the ground, what do you think about that? What comes to your mind?
Normally you don't see
They feel what? They feel safe. Okay?
Normally you don't see horses laying down, he's always standing up.
So it takes a lot for a horse to feel that they're safe enough to lay down, because that's their most vulnerable position. And I don't know, can others see the 3 horses in the back, or we only can see the 2? Okay. So what do you think the difference is between the 3 standing and the 2 lying down? And if you were to be any of those horses, which one would be you?
Lay down.
Laying down. Let's go for the lay down.
The others
Okay.
look like they're watching over.
Say that again?
The 3 look like they're watching over.
The 3 look like they're watching over.
Okay.
So what often comes up when we have veterans see horses do this is who they were in service and who they might feel they, there you go. Now you can see.
That's it.
Because sometimes when people come home from service, they still feel like they're the 3 watching over. And that's a hard position to be in. And their goal is to maybe feel as comfortable as the 3 laying down. 2 laying down, thank you. What's the matter with you? Thank God you're here. This is a really interesting one. And when you look at this at first, you might not see a big difference, but we have these 3 Norwegian fjords that are wonderful horses to work with.
Excuse
And we
me,
have
what did you call it?
Norwegian fjords, FJ, that's
the water, like a...
Yep, like, yeah.
Yes.
So if you look at these 3, and they're attempting to have a relationship with each of these horses, we ask you to look at the nonverbal cues that the horses are giving. The one horse all the way at that end with the woman that's got her hand on it, does that horse look like it's engaged with that lady or relaxed? What did you notice about that horse's connection with her? Aloof, that's a fabulous word. How about the guy in the middle with the horse? He's holding the horse's face. Any thoughts about that? How does the horse look in that connection with him? Relax. Anything else?
I'd say anxious.
Anxious. So his ears are up and they're actually pointing a little bit back, and his eyes are a little closed if you compare the faces. And then we have the young veteran on this side with that horse. And what do you make of their relationship?
Very close.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. What do you think the difference is in their approach? Any thoughts?
One maybe let the horse come to her.
Brilliant. One lady let the horse come to her. So how we relate to horses is how we often relate to people in our lives. So the one guy is like, I've got you. You know, you're going to hang with me. That may be very controlling. The other lady seems like the horse is relaxed, but he's not the least bit interested in her because she's holding him back. So this is a great opportunity for veterans that might be struggling with relationships, and it doesn't mean that all veterans do. They might come across in a way different than they think. This is all with a group of young veterans that came to us, and we asked them to create a space that was safe for the pony. And we said, what would that look like when you create a space when they're home? So they created this very interesting thing to make the pony safe. And they said that in our life, there's a lot of things that are, I just want to back up so you can see. That there's a lot of things that are coming and going in our lives all the time. And we always want to know that the pony has a way out, and we don't want to overwhelm the pony. And then later on we got to talk about what things are easy and hard in their lives that are making it difficult for the pony. And about 10 minutes later, they all dropped the poles and they said, oh, I guess what we need most is not to put so many barriers up for ourselves when we come home. And that sometimes we make it harder on ourselves than it has to be. All right. These are some pictures of veterans that have been in our sessions. And one of the things that this veteran learned is that he was using the same behavior to make the horse go away from him. And then I said, why don't you bring the horse closer? And he realized he had the same energy and he was pushing the horse away. And he said, I think I do that with all the people in my life as well. That sometimes what makes me excited sort of pushes people away. This is a gal, when she came to the farm, she just kept walking and walking and walking. And she found it very hard to just stand still and be, because that's when all her anxiety would come up. And a lot of flashbacks for her. This horse actually sort of rewarded her when she stopped and was able to be still. She said she just melted for the first time. For the first time she was able to put all her defenses behind her, and this was a great shot. This was just wonderful for her. There's something else that goes on for some people where they might be not hearing what people are telling them or what horses are telling them. And this lady realized that the less she does, the more available she is for the horses to come near her. That when she just stood still and not work so hard at her relationships, they really flowed with her quite well. All right, I'm going to hand it over to my horse expert.
Okay, and I may need glasses. So, why is EA...
Is this on? Now hold it closer.
Why is EAP effective? It's experiential learning. So that's learning by doing. And 20%, we learn 20% of what we see. We learn 40% of what we hear. But we retain 80% of what we do. So for an example, most of you drive or have driven. So you read the manual. How much did you know about driving a car? Not a lot, but you did learn when you got out on the road. So similar to that. It is solution focused. So everybody kind of learns at their own pace. There's no talking required. It's you and the horse. It's your relationship, whatever you create or observe. There's no re-exposure. We don't talk about trauma or PTSD. It's kind of whatever's going on in your life at that time. Horses are in the present. So you learn new patterns of behavior through the experience. And through the reaction you get You learn new ways of dealing with things, new ways of coping, and it can translate into your real life, which is very helpful. Okay. Where did my horses go?
I don't know.
Back
They
one.
went. I don't know.
We lost it. So
We lost something.
we lost something, so why horses? Horses live in the present, they live in the moment. There is no time to them. It's immediate, and they react immediately, just like people do. They don't hold on to things, they let things go. Whatever you're feeling in the moment, they will feel, they'll react to you. They are prey animals, so they respond to verbal and nonverbal cues, including things that maybe unconsciously you're not aware of that they might bring up. And that allows you to reach your goals, some personal challenges, or help with relationships. Horses are hypervigilant, meaning that with being prey animals, they're always on guard and they're always looking for that safe space. And they can work with you to help create that safe space, because that's what everybody is looking for, is to be safe and comfortable. They don't judge because they just are. They're what they are, they're in the moment, they're in the present. And because of their physical presence, and they're being almost, larger than life, they can help with things that come up and help guide you through things that are bigger than yourself. For example, fear, something that's challenging in your life.
So, I actually just finished a 3-year study with Columbia where we treated about 80 veterans with our groundwork course program. And we saw the scores of depression go way down and the PTSD scores really went down. It will be a published study in about a year when they get all the kinks worked out. We were really surprised how effective it was. I've been a talk therapist for 35 years, and I've really changed my practice to doing just about 80% of this and a lot less in the office. Not everybody is cured with talk therapy, and PTSD actually never gets cured. What we hope to do is help them regulate their emotions and regulate their energy. One of the things we do is we have a horse in a round pen, and when their energy goes up, the horse goes faster. When their energy comes down, the horse goes slower. Anything that they learn and practice with the horse, that gets really rewired into their brain, and they can carry that out into their own life. EGALA is the only organization in the country that certifies people to be military designated. And to earn that, we have to have a certain amount of years working with veterans, whether with horses or without, and we have to take quite a few number of courses. I did not serve. I am not in the military, and I'm very honored to be able to have the opportunity to work with veterans from Iraq and Iran all the way up through the Vietnam War and on. I'm going to let Gina tell you a little bit about her farm, and just coming out to be on the farm, being in the fresh air, being out of the office certainly is great for me, and we found it really successful for our veterans. Why don't you tell them about your farm and where it is?
Okay, Equine Expressions is located on 53 Cedar Lake Road in North Branford, Connecticut. It takes about 30 acres. There are 11 horses on the farm. All of them work with veterans. They also work with other people, just not in the veterans program. Right now, let's see, we told you about the program format. So hopefully within the next couple of months, this program will be available, so anybody who is interested, feel free to contact me. Catch up with me. You have flyers that I've left. There's also cards. Are there any questions?
You said this is Stanford?
It's in North Branford.
Oh.
North Branford.
I thought this was Stanford.
Nope, North Branford.
Okay, so this is...
On 53 Cedar Lake Road.
Okay.
So, kind of behind the Big Y,
Oh, okay.
between Twin Lakes and Route 80.
Is there any connection with the horse rescue farm over there on Route 22?
No.
No. Okay.
Nope.
Has anyone here, oh, go ahead.
the veterans ride the horses? Got therapy?
No, this is all done on the ground. It's all done on the ground.
You want to tell them why? The horse has the free will.
It's done on the ground because the horse has the free will to work with you, and you have free will to work with the horse. Whether it decides to be with you, not be with you, and you work with the horse in order to engage. And that's what brings about the metaphors and the changes and a reaction or inaction.
Any other questions?
So initially, if you signed up for the program, what would be the first thing you would do when you arrived with the horses?
Yeah.
Initially,
Yeah.
when you arrive, we go over a few things with you about the horses, but you go out and you meet the horses. The horses will be usually in an arena.
I'm gonna go back. So the question was, what would you do if you came to the farm? So I'm gonna go back if I can find that one. Usually the first thing we do is we do observation. Sometimes outside the arena and sometimes in. Because not everybody's comfortable going into an arena with 5 or 10 or even one horse. And we ask you, and we go over some safety tips. Certainly where to be careful of where your feet are. You have free will to move. The horses have free will, and they have big teeth behind those beautiful big lips of theirs. So we ask you not to feed your fingers. And then there's different activities we do from, we call this meet and greet, and then we groom the horses sometimes. Sometimes you'll be lead walking horses, depending on what your goals are. Everyone who comes might have different goals. These people were all struggling with relationships and feeling like they were destroying a lot of their relationships and weren't clear how they were coming across to other people. So that was the goal that they were working on.
And I think another important thing is it's your goal. It's what you want to work on. We don't choose for you what to work on.
So, go ahead.
I'm not sure if it's like PTSD or it's what people I'm running into.
Right, that's true.
Exactly.
So for this guy, as I said earlier, he had so much energy that he thought he was bringing people closer with his energy, and he was actually pushing them further away. And it's amazing that 6 or 8 sessions can make a big difference. Has anyone here been around horses or works with horses? I'm just curious. Okay. Have you ever heard of stuff like this? Yeah, but once you're with them once in your life, you're addicted. It's a disease. It's a terrible thing. And you two have been around horses? Oh, somebody won something.
We almost got a horse on our ship one time.
Oh, no, that would have been interesting.
It was, but it was late at night, we brought her back, was in Naples, and we got him halfway up to Gatwick, and the captain came out, it was very good.
You know,
But sailors will try anything.
yeah, I've heard that.
I
I've
don't know
heard
what we would have
that.
done if we did get it.
You know, what we don't remember is horses were really a big part of our military many years ago. And they were a big part of our workforce. So now this is a great job for a lot of horses who can't be performance horses anymore or were pets. And, you know, this is something that they can do to live out their life because they're really social beings. Okay. If any other questions, otherwise I know we're, go ahead.
Why were horses picked out? Is there a reason for that?
Why were horses picked to do this? Really good question. Because they're prey animals and they're not predators. Dogs have their own agenda, and they have where they usually set the tone. Horses are always waiting to hear or see or feel what they're being told by the humans around them, and they react to everything. And they're wonderful role models for people with PTSD because they do want to have relationships and they want to connect. And dogs, even though I love them and they often love all of us, they're predators and they're very different. And they often feel safe, dogs. Horses feel at any moment they can be eaten because they're prey animals, which is very much how a lot of veterans with PTSD feel, that at any minute the bottom can fall out. That was a great question. I know that we're running tight on time, so. Yeah, you don't want to go, right? All right. So, and also, the VA gave about $630,000 for this grant, And they don't give money out very easily, as you well know. So this is the very first time that they're giving money out under this grant for something like this. They've seen that their traditional ways of healing people may not be working, so the VA is willing to try giving money to something else. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know how to do this, so we'll leave it for now.
We're gonna leave it, yeah. I'll just unplug it from a wall.
That's okay.
Yes, please.
You want lights.
I do want lights. Thank you very much for the presentation. Our next speaker was scheduled to be Dave Ambrose, the town assessor. He got tied up and he is short-staffed in his office, so I am Dave Ambrose today.
Hi, Dave.
So, I'm going to try to share with you as much as I can about the assessor's office and veterans exemptions and tax benefits as I can. However, at the end of it, I'm going to give you Dave's phone number. And if you have a specific question, you can call him direct and let his phone light up. So, I have my cheat sheet here, bear with me. As you know, if you are a veteran, you can get an exemption on your home or your car for the amount of taxes that you will have to pay on your property. I do have this cheat sheet up on our information table, so when you leave today, feel free to grab one so you don't have to remember everything I'm telling you. It identifies the wars that people would be eligible if they had been a service person during that wartime to be eligible for this benefit. In order to receive the benefit, you must have basic veteran exemption, honorable discharge. There are income requirements for all veterans, but then we have another category of disabled veterans. So there are two groups, and I'll explain the caps for each. If you are not disabled, you are a veteran, but you are not disabled, the maximum adjusted gross income to be eligible for a tax benefit on your home as a single individual is $36,000 a year. If you make $37,000 a year, you cannot get that tax exemption just for being a veteran. If you are a married couple, the income limit is $42,000. You have to provide the assessor with the first page of your federal tax return. That shows your adjusted gross income. Your Social Security 1099 form that you'll get at the end of every year. Please don't throw it out. You need it for so many things. And you sign up between February 1 and September 30. So I usually tell people when I work with them on programs, if you happen to have a cell phone, I know a lot of people don't have a smartphone, a wall calendar at home, a cell phone, please put it in your calendar February 1 to apply, because sometimes you forget and you think about things and you have a conversation with somebody, it's August, and you say, oh, I forgot to bring my papers in, and it's game over. You have to wait till the following February. So it's important, I shouldn't have said August, I should have said October. If you remember in October, you're out of luck. So please put it down. If you are a disabled veteran, and it does not need to be service-related, your exemption goes up. So it's based on your disability rating. And again, I have this on the cheat sheet. You can take it home. You don't have to remember, but I'm just going to give you an example. If your disability rating is between 10% and 25%, your exemption will be $6,000. Now, if you also meet that income limit, so let's say you're a single individual, you make less than $36,000, and you're disabled. So you're in both categories. Your exemption doubles from $6,000 to $12,000. So in other words, you could fall into both categories and get the exemption. Does that make sense? Because if it doesn't, I'll go over it again. Are we good? Okay. The other question that people ask is, if you're a veteran and you have an exemption on your home and you pass, does that exemption pass on to your spouse? And it will pass on to your spouse, not to your children, but it will pass on to your spouse. But if your spouse remarries, the exemption goes away. It could also apply to your car. And I think that's the basics. If somebody has a question, I'll take a shot at answering, and if I don't know, I'll give you Dave's number. Go ahead.
It gives you percentage of disability. Who determines it?
Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration will assess your level of disability. Were there any more questions? Yes.
Do you have to go?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir? Yes.
Do you have to apply for this every year?
I believe it is only once in your lifetime, because once you have your DD 214, unless your income goes up.
Where do you apply every year?
So I believe that if you are a disabled veteran and you're getting the disability, you only have to file once. But if you're also doing income related, then you have to do it, I believe, annually. But I'll give you Dave's number to be sure on that. He said to me, he goes, I have my cell phone here. If questions come up I have an answer for, I'm gonna call him. So when Ann speaks, I'll ask him that question and I'll give you the accurate answer. And you had a question?
Yeah, does you said disability does not have to be military related.
Right.
If you had surgery by a civilian doctor,
Yeah.
is that good enough to provide to the VA?
I would imagine if it's deemed to be, if you're deemed to be disabled. I think that's the key word. Are you deemed to be disabled? But I will ask that of Dave as well while Ann speaks, just to be certain. But if you have surgery and you are a disabled individual after the surgery, as long as that could be assessed as disabled, I would think I don't think it matters whether you have a civilian physician or a veteran's physician. Did you need, no? Okay. Were there any more questions? Okay. I'm going to now introduce Kathy Poston right before Ann, because Ann's going to be speaking. Kathy, if you want to come up here so people know who you are. This is Kathy Poston, and every town is required by law to have a veterans liaison. If you have heard me call her a veteran service officer, my mistake. I have no idea why I said that, but she is our veterans liaison. And if veterans have any questions regarding programs or services, Kathy Poston, she has an office here at the Senior Center. She's the contact person. Thank you. I want you to see her face. So, So now I'd like to introduce you to Ann Mosier. Ann, if you want to come up. Ann is our real Veterans Service Officer. You have to excuse, sometimes I don't get my titles correctly. And she works for the state of Connecticut, not the Federal Veterans Administration. And she works for the Office of Advocacy and Assistance, and her role really is to help veterans with programs, services. Sometimes it's just understanding, sometimes it's facilitating things for individuals. So Ann Mosier, Veteran Service Officer for our district. Thank you, Ann.
Thanks, Louisa. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here. Indeed, my name is Ann Mosier. I'm a Veteran Service Officer with the State of Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. I help Connecticut veterans and their families get the benefits that they're eligible and entitled to under the law. So, I wanted today to give you sort of a brief overview of the VA. I know that with veterans benefits, there's lots of ifs, ands, or buts, right? We see that already by asking about the tax abatement, right? And so I want to keep it general while we're talking, but then I will give you all of my contact information, and you and I can talk one-on-one about your individual circumstance. That way, we're not sort of going on and on and on about something that isn't something that everybody would benefit from. So, smart people who've watched me give this talk have told me to do a few things first before I get going. So I have a little bit of housekeeping for you. I always assume that people assume that I'm a veteran, but often they don't. And so somebody told me once, you know, you've got to establish some credibility here. So I should let you know, I'm a proud former Army combat medic. I served primarily with the 1st Cavalry Division, and I've been deployed to combat. So just so you know, in case I look like I don't have any credibility, I hope I do now. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. It was my pleasure and privilege to serve in the United States Army. So the other thing that I think is a good idea to always keep in mind is those ifs, ands, or buts when it comes to VA regulations and all of that can be very disconcerting. So I want you to know that at the end of our talk today, there will not be a test. Right? Because very often I'll start to look out and see people, you know, getting upset and looking back at me because it is kind of dry and hard to understand sometimes. So I want you to know that there are service officers. I have counterparts in all of the congressional districts, as well as the national organizations like the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, all have service officers who do have to know all about it, right? But you, as a veteran or a family member, you don't have to know every benefit inside and out because it's pretty confusing. Well, we have to pass tests, so we do know, and we'll help you get them. So try not to feel too frustrated if you don't understand exactly all the ins and outs. So the other thing that is a good thing to know is, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to give you a basic overview, and then I think there are so many veterans benefits, so I could speak for hours and hours and hours and not cover every single one of them, and the law that is written about them. So I'm going to pick some that are particularly helpful to some veterans, and then I'll open it up to a question and answer period. And like I said, if you have something that's sort of an in-depth situation that happened with you, I would love to talk about it with you, you know, at my office or via email or something like that. Okay, the Veterans Affairs. I know that for a lot of folks, the Veterans Affairs seems like, well, that when we say VA, you mean the hospital, right? Or you mean it, or disability. It's all the same thing. But actually, the federal VA has 3 main branches. They have Veterans Health Administration, VHA. So that's like the veterans hospitals and the community-based outpatient clinics. And then there is the Veterans Benefits Administration, VBA. And that's things like service-connected disability compensation, veterans pension with aid and attendance, GI Bill, and things like that. Those are, I call VBA kind of like VA money. That's the VA money lane. And then the third section of the VA is the Burial and Cemetery Association. So on a national level, that's Arlington and those national cemeteries. And that has its whole own branch as far as the VA is concerned. So, So my bread and butter is really veterans' benefits. I help veterans file claims for service-connected disability compensation. I represent them during the process, and I help them if they get denied and need to appeal it. I'm their representative, your attorney in fact, for the VA. I also help veterans get access to pension with aid and attendance. I've left information on everything I'm talking about today on that table, so you can have my contact information and also read up a little bit more about it. So within veterans benefits, there's two very different kinds of benefits. There's service-connected disability compensation. That's when a veteran is wounded, injured, or made ill by his or her service, has a disability now, and there's a link between the two. And then there's another benefit called, actually its proper name is called non-service connected pension. And there's also a benefit for surviving spouses named death pension. I sort of think that's kind of a depressing name, but that's the formal name. So non-service connected just means you don't have to be wounded, injured, or made ill by your service. It means that you must have served at 90 days active duty, at least one day during a wartime period, and be other than dishonorably discharged, and be over 65 years of age, or if you're younger than that, permanently and totally, deemed permanently and totally disabled. So pension, non-service connected pension, it also gets referred to a lot of times as pension with aid and attendance. But really what it is it's a financially needs-based program for veterans and their surviving spouses who need the help of another person every day to help them with at least two of the activities of daily living, and who meet the financial eligibility requirements. Ooh, this is where it all starts to get, sort of dry, and a lot of those ifs, ands, or buts come in. So, like I said at the beginning, I have more information that explains in greater detail how to apply for that benefit on the table, and that you shouldn't worry if it seems confusing. I know it backwards, forwards. I feel like I could do it in my sleep. One of my former colleagues, Tony Taragowski, is here today. She taught me a lot of what I know. So Tony, thank you, and I'm so happy to see you, and Joe. So, try not to feel like, oh, so frustrating. So there are some local benefits. Those are the federal benefits. So there's some local state benefits as well. So we have a lovely state veterans cemetery in Middletown, Connecticut. Our commissioners have worked very hard to get it looking and seeming like a better place to spend the rest of your eternity. It's beautiful. They've regraded the land. They've improved the land. They added a columbarium, so if you are cremated, you can have a niche to put your cremains, as they call them. And that is available to Connecticut veterans. And if they designate before their death that they would like to have their spouse, if they predecease their spouse, to be buried there, then it is possible for a spouse to be interred with her veteran husband.
I'm going to interrupt you, Ann, just for a moment.
Yeah.
Scott Shoemaker is here, our Board of Ed Superintendent of Schools, and he'd like just one moment, because he has a meeting to go to, to give veterans...
Don't leave the stage.
No.
I promise I'll be very brief. I just want to extend an invitation to the school system on Veterans Day, the 11th. 3 of our buildings will have special programs going on. Friday, the intermediate school will have programs going on. I have a schedule here, it's all laid out for you. So if you play it right, you could have breakfast at Jerome Harris in the morning, see the program, get lunch at the high school, be a part of that program, and end your day. I don't have any dinner plans right now, but I'm still working on it. So I'm going to ask Louisa to pass these out. I apologize because I'm running between two meetings, unfortunately, but I want to thank all of you for your service and what you've done to make this country the greatest place to live in the world. I have a son who's finished his first year in the Marine Corps. He's 19 years old, so Semper Fi. And I'm proud to announce that each year our graduating class, we track our students that go into the armed forces, and male and female, and we usually average about 6% of our student population are graduating seniors that go on to serve this great country. And it's amazing the opportunities that our armed forces have today for our young adults. And I know in the last 20 years that I've changed my focus on opportunities for young adults to go and get their education provided, to serve their country, and start their careers. It's really a wonderful opportunity, so we'll continue to do that. I will be around Friday and Monday, Veterans Day, so please take the time to come out, spend time with us, get involved if you want to. If not, sit on the side, enjoy lunch, listen to the veterans present, hear our music. We have groups playing throughout the day, so I think you'll have a wonderful day. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I feel like he was standing there for a long time. Oh, my goodness. Well, in any event, just to let you know some state benefits. So we have this Veterans Cemetery in Middletown. We also have a state-of-the-art skilled nursing facility on our Rocky Hill campus available to veterans. It's really a wonderful place and has a few distinct levels of care. There's memory care, and then there's skilled nursing, and it's a lovely thing for veterans because they're surrounded by their comrades in arms, and it's a nice place. I think sometimes we think of nursing homes as not such nice places. I think you would be surprised if you, or happily surprised if you went into the Levittow Center, and I've left information on that at the table as well. There's also tax abatement that Louisa, great, she pinch hitted, terrific. I think it would be a good idea to double check everything about eligibility with Dave Ambrose. I think that's who your tax assessor is, because it's hard to, there are lots of ins and outs, and so I think that the difference between service-connected and non-service-connected has a bigger distinction than you may have thought after hearing Louisa. And so, anyway, I'll be happy to address that with you, in particular. But mostly it's not, the abatement amount only lowers your property, your taxable amount. It's not, so when she said $6,000, it's not like $6,000 is applied to your tax bill. It's like, say your house is $106,000, your house will be assessed at $6,000 lower. And so, that may really not trickle out to be a great deal of money. However, there are times when it can be very helpful. If you do not own a house, but you own a car and it's a few years old and doesn't assess for a very high value, it can eclipse completely sometimes your tax bill. So, but that one I think it's important to get clarification from the tax assessor's office. But each town can handle it differently. They can be as generous as they like, and so what may be happening in North Branford may not be what is happening in Orange, Connecticut, or Bridgeport, Connecticut. Each, as I said, each municipality has the ability to decide for itself the amount of money and who is eligible, what the eligibility requirements are. So, I think that that is sort of my basic overview. And I wonder if there are anybody who has questions that you think, oh, I really wanted to ask somebody about this, or this is, or share information about things that maybe I haven't touched on that you think would be helpful for other veterans to know. As I've said, there are so many that it's, I could talk for hours and hours, but there's been some new legislation, maybe, that you might be interested to know about. Blue water veterans, the Congress has passed a law that they are indeed to be presumed to be exposed to Agent Orange if they were 12 miles or less off the coast of Vietnam during the Vietnam era. And they also extended the exposure for Agent Orange in Korea at the DMZ. They had a very shortened period of eligibility, which now they've widened, which is important. And also Camp Lejeune, unfortunately, had some contaminated water for, golly, many years. I think it was like dry cleaning chemicals that leached into the drinking water. And so there are 7 diseases for Marines or other military personnel who can show that they were on Camp Lejeune for 30 days cumulatively between, I don't know the dates exactly, but it's like between like 1950 and 80. So it's a pretty big period of time. There are some, the list of diseases are pretty terrible, but they are not the same diseases as Agent Orange causes, and so sometimes veterans are confused about the two. The Camp Lejeune illnesses from the water are like kidney cancer, liver cancer, bladder cancer, aplastic anemia, multiple myeloma. I gotta look at them. I know there's 7 of them. I tried to do a little acronym for myself so I'd always remember, but yes.
I have a question. You were in Vietnam for a full year.
Mm-hmm.
How do they evaluate whether you have been affected or not affected? If you don't have cancer, do they say you haven't been affected by Agent Orange?
Right, that's a good question. It's like, the question was if you were in Vietnam, but you are not ill with any of the diseases, does the VA say you're not affected by Agent Orange?
Not only was I in Vietnam, but we had Agent Orange dropped on us by mistake. Yet the veterans indicated that because I don't have cancer, I wasn't affected by Agent Orange.
Well, by affected, the VA, I believe the VA is talking about those conditions that those diseases that people develop as a reason or as a cause of being exposed to Agent Orange. So exposure to Agent Orange doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be ill. And so in order for the VA to grant service-connected disability compensation for an illness, yes, you must have an actual illness. So there are other ways that service in Vietnam, combat, and exposure to chemicals might affect you not physically. It could be...
Maybe 5 years from now, I may get cancer, but for 5 years, they haven't been able to pick it up because they said I haven't been affected.
when you're diagnosed, by a medical doctor, it's important to remember, hold on one second. It's important to remember that service-connected disability compensation is about medical conditions. And the only person in a position to give a medical opinion is a medical doctor. So we may feel a certain way, we may have good common sense, we may even have a good instinct, but if we're not medical doctors, then we cannot diagnose ourselves with anything. So it's important to remember. And when we're talking about Agent Orange too, we should also remember that the list of diseases associated with that, although long, they're finding out new things all the time. And so when you are in Vietnam, you're exposed to Agent Orange and you have one of the diseases on their presumptive list, then they call that presumptively service-connected. But maybe the disease that your doctor has diagnosed you with isn't on that list. But if that doctor believes that it really was caused by herbicide exposure, if he or she can provide medical research that's accepted medical treatise, right, in research done by scientists and medical doctors about diseases associated with those benzodiazepine or herbicides, then, if they will write a letter to that effect saying, I believe it was caused by this in my professional medical opinion, and here's the medical research to support that, then you may be directly service-connected, right? It's not on the presumptive list, but directly. This nice lady. Yeah. So if a veteran is pursuing service-connected disability, the question was, does he have to do it with VA doctors? And the answer is no. A doctor is a doctor is a doctor, but it has to be a doctor, has to be an MD or a PhD, right? Someone who has the ability to give a medical opinion. Yes?
So, I just want to get this right. You have to have a specific cancer for Vietnam. How did you look at that?
Well, with medical research. So as they were noticing that cohorts of Vietnam veterans were coming down with certain illnesses, and there are many, there's not just one kind of cancer, there's many on the list. Pardon me? That's for Camp Lejeune. Camp Lejeune has 7 diseases, that contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. Agent Orange from Vietnam is a much larger list of diseases and conditions, serious, and but some of them very treatable, like diabetes. That's associated with Agent Orange. Pardon me?
How do you get a list of what it is?
I brought the list. It's on the table.
The information table is here with my cheat sheet from the assessor's office, Connecticut Guide to Emergency Procurement. It has nothing to do with veterans, but it's a great thing to have in your house when we're in hurricane season. And it can brought lots of information, and the horse equestrian presentation also brought information. So this is your go-to spot.
But I just wanted to say that not all of the presumptive illnesses are not cancers. There is diabetes, I have an ischemic heart disease.
That's right. It's not just cancers. It's also ischemic heart disease, Parkinson's disease, diabetes. So it's not all cancers. It's a long list. But again, you don't have to memorize them. VSOs have to know them, or at least not memorize them, but know where to look them up. And we do. So, yes. The only legislation that I'm aware of, she asked, is the list expanding for those diseases associated with Agent Orange. And the newest legislation is, again, not so much the diseases, but the presumption of exposure for those Navy veterans who may have been denied in the past. So they passed the legislation about the blue water veterans. But you know, it's one thing to pass a law, it's another thing to figure out how you're going to actually deliver those benefits. So the VA is beginning to work on that because they had to think, well, what do we do about veterans who've applied and were denied in the past? What do we do about veterans who who were applied and were denied and their widow is now maybe eligible for some benefits? What do we do about widows who've applied in the past and been denied? You know, so they are beginning to figure it out, but they said, give us until January 2020 for a definitive answer on what we're going to do about those Navy veterans who were denied because they were not allowed the presumption of exposure to Agent Orange. Yes?
What about the sons from the servicemen regarding cancer?
Well, the children of veterans, they have a very small list of diseases, spina bifida. The question was, what about children of veterans exposed to Agent Orange? Yeah, unfortunately, no. That list is very small, spina bifida. So they have, medical research has not found that there's a link between anything else and parents who are exposed to Agent Orange at this time. But, you know, they're doing research all the time on diseases and their etiology, right? Where you get them, where they start. Anybody else have a question?
Shifting gears.
Yeah.
Regarding death benefits. I know the VA provides a footstone for veterans and deceased. Can you ask for that at any time in that place prior to
The question was, can you request a marker, the plaque or a headstone prior to the veteran's death? No. I think you must, the government is not going to issue something in advance. Yeah, in order to apply for a headstone or a marker, I think the first requirement is that you're actually gone. Yeah, I know. It would be nice to be able to, if you have a plot and you're to take care of that and not have that waiting time. But I will say that if you're interred at our Connecticut Veterans Cemetery in Middletown, you won't wait, and we're happy to provide military honors there as well and present the flag. So those things are great. Something else that Louisa had asked me to touch on, I want to let you know, is honor flights. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a national program, but Connecticut started a hub for it, and it's for veterans to be flown free of charge to Washington, D.C. to visit the memorial of the war they fought in, and any memorial they wish to sit and reflect on. And I brought again, applications for that, and if they're a veteran who's needing someone to come along with them, there are applications for that as well, over on the table over there. Yes?
I heard that it's tough to get a military burial with some gun salute. People aren't doing it.
Well, there was a time when, funding was down and there was some brouhaha about that. However, our honor guard is up and running and available. So yeah, yes, that's true. The question was, he heard it was difficult to get the honor guard, but I don't think that's been anybody's experience lately. So, yes?
Is there a salary cap that's not allowed to be
The VA, the question was, is there a salary cap to get enrolled in VA medical or to get your prescriptions through the VA? I guess I'm going to say in a word, yes. But, you know, here's one of those ifs, ands, or buts, right? The VA enrolls people in VA healthcare according to priority levels. And the first priority are veterans who are 70 to 100% service-connected disabled. And they pretty much get everything that they need from VA healthcare for free for life. And then as you descend in priority levels, you may have, it may be based on the era that you served. It may be based on a lower level of disability. And then you will be assessed if you don't fall into any of the priority levels. They'll say, all right, does this veteran pass our means test? And a means test just means, do you have the means to pay for your health care yourself? And so if you are deemed to be in, under the limit, then you could be enrolled in VA healthcare just based on sort of your low income. Other things are compassionate care. There may be veterans who aren't eligible for any of the priority levels, but they have no other form of health care, and so the VA would enroll them in that, in there. So that's, yes, it's, there's always sort of more to the question. I think I see lunch being served, and I want to let you enjoy that and stop talking about my dry stuff.
How many years were you in?
I was active duty for 4 years, and the question was, how long was I in? I was active duty for 4 years, and then I served in a reserve unit in Danbury, the 411 Civil Affairs. But I was in a medical company in the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood. That's right, that's the horse. That's right. Yep. So thank you so much for having me today. And right back at you, veterans, thank you for your service. It's my, as I said, it was my privilege and pleasure to serve in the military, and it's also my privilege and pleasure to help Connecticut veterans. So have a terrific lunch, and I'll be around so you can ask me questions. Okay, thank you.